In this lesson, we'll be learning how to create text using Photoshop. And there are two main ways to generate text using the text tool. And we're also going to learn how to put text on a path, as you can see here with the text going around the dogs and the text going along a line that was created with the pen tool, as you see here. The other thing I'm going to show you too is how you can actually use the content aware feature when you're creating a fill. Let me show you the original image here, which I have open, of the two dogs. And I actually made this longer, or taller rather, using a generative fill. As you can see here, this is a taller vertical here. So we'll also generate this grass in the background based on existing grass. Okay. So why don't we just click on the new file right now. And first thing you should do is do a save as and save it as a new image. So I'm just going to do that right now. Save as. And let's see here. I have a little folder for this exercise. And importantly, let's make it Photoshop. And just make it your last name and the lesson number. So I'm not sure on the number. I'm going to go 0x and just go save. All right. So to begin with, I'm going to stretch my canvas size to make it taller. And that's done under the Image Canvas Size pull-down menu. And you get this menu right here. And this is the anchor point. So I'm going to put it at the bottom in the middle, which means the new area will be generated at the top. I'm going to give it basically another 1,000 pixels here. I'm going to go 3,300 and click OK. And there we have, our white fill. So to create extra fill here, I think just to be safe, I'm going to duplicate my layer. Right click, duplicate. And I'll just call this dogs. And we'll save that background as an emergency or something to compare against perhaps. Okay, so in here I want to fill this top area. So I'm going to isolate it with the rectangle marquee tool. But I also want to select as much of this grass as I can without touching on the dogs' heads, like that. So here we go. Let's give this a try. Edit fill. And here is where content aware might do us some great justice. So it looks for surrounding pixels and tries to repeat them as a pattern basically. So I'm just going to leave it at content aware, mode 100% normal, opacity, OK. And wait and see what I get. And there we go. That's actually not so bad. I'm just going to deselect by going Command D on the Mac, Control D on the PC. Now to give it a little more realism, if I show you the original or the finished here, I'm just going to wash a bit of white over it as a gradient. So I'll make a new layer for that. I'll actually name it gradient. And we'll go into the gradient tool. And for that, I'm going to use classic gradient for today. Either one would work though for this exercise. But what I want to make sure is that I'm going foreground to transparent. So I'm just going to double click on that and also make sure that it's linear right there. Okay, so I'm ready to go. And I'm just going to click, I'm actually going to start a little bit on the outside and hold my shift key down and just drag down to just sort of where the dog's heads are, like that. Now that's a bit extreme, so what you can do is go over to your layer and just turn down the opacity. And that's not bad. I'm down to about 41%, it looks like. There we go. I'm just going to save that. And there is our extended background. Looking fairly realistic. The fact that I know I'm going to put a bunch of copy on top of this lets me get away with this sort of repeated pattern. Otherwise, I could go in with my healing tools and my clone tools and make it more random looking, but it's not bad for a single fill. So that's kind of step one. At this point, I'm going to show you how you can generate text. So we do need to use the text tool to initiate text. So I'm just going to come down here and choose the horizontal type tool. And At the very top, you do have your text preferences, or your text properties rather, fonts, sizes, alignment, and so on. I'm going to leave it at black. It is center aligned, which is what I want. And the first type of text that I'm going to show you is called point text. What that means basically is you just put your cursor where you need to start it and you click. After you've clicked, you start to type, or you can possibly paste text in that you've already copied from somewhere. So I'm just going to do a simple click. And when it starts, it inserts a placeholder with some text called lorem ipsum. So I'm going to replace that. I'm just going to go point, P-O-I-N-T, point text. And I'll try to spell that correctly. There we go, point text. So again, point text, I'm going to leave a space here. If I started to type in words, it's all on a single line. Okay, now I'm going to just delete the nonsense part that I typed in. And to get a second line, you actually have to hit your return key. So I'm going to hit my return key. And I'm going to cheat and look at my finished file and repeat what I said there. So point text is initiated with a click, and then you type or paste text. It remains on a single line unless you type in a return. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to copy that text to save a lot of time here. And this helps me demonstrate copy paste. Edit copy. Bounce over to my newer file. And again, I can initiate it. If I've clicked away, I can initiate it by getting really close, and you'll notice the I-beam, the dotted line disappears. Okay, so I'm just going to hit return again on the new line. And on the Mac, I'm going to Command V. It would be Control V on the PC. There we go. And that is what we call point text. Now, if I go low enough while I'm still engaged with the text, you see my cursor changes to an arrow. I can move that while I'm still engaged on the text tool. Otherwise, if I was no longer in the text tool, I can move it at all times with the move tool up here, as you can see. Now, a little trick to center that is while on that layer, you can go select all, Command A or Control A on the PC, and just do the alignment, and watch this. It'll just switch over, and that is perfectly centered. Okay, I'm going to go Command D, Control D on the PC to deselect. And I'm going to save. I'm good to go here. Save. So there's another type of text that we can create, and it's called area text. And basically what you're doing there is when you initiate it, you're creating a text box. So let me go to the text tool and show you how that's done. So it's basically a click and drag to define the box area. So I'm just going to click in here, and you see how it creates a dotted line. And even if it's not perfect when I first create it, I can always come back. There are little handles to resize it. So there we go. And it is also filled with placeholder text. So in this case, I'm going to cut to the chase. And I'm going to go to this existing document, click inside of that existing text, and just drag across all of that to capture it and copy that. Click back over to my newer file. I can click in here just to make sure I capture everything. I can click in there and go select all, which is Command A on the Mac, Control A on the PC, and then paste in what I just copied. And there we go. Now this I had aligned, if I show you here, to the left. Okay. And once again, I'll just click over on my move tool if I wanted to move that. Or if I wanted to make sure it was centered, select all, click my center button, and it did shift slightly, so it's now perfectly centered. Command D to deselect, Command S to save. Alright, so those are our two main types of text. We have the point text, click and type, click and paste, and the area text, click and drag to make a text box. And actually, let me show you here. If I select that, if I go into my text tool and click inside of there, here are the handles to resize. And I can see it's a little hard to see the horizontal handle, but there are some here as well. Okay. So this will let me resize it, as I said. See here, and the text flows. And this is a good way to show that. The text flows. So let's say I wanted this a different width. Okay, there we go. And again, if I want to center that, I can go to my Move tool, select all, and just center it using the alignment tool, and there we go. Okay, deselect, Command D, and that is the area text. So the next bit of fun we're going to have is we're going to create what's called text on a path. We're going to use our vector tools to create the path. So I'm going to do two examples of that. One I'll put around a circle, if you will, and I'll try to just kind of circle the dogs here, and I'll show you how you can generate the text, of course, and then control it. And then the second example I'll use is just text on a line that was created with the pen tool. So let's start with the text on a circle. I'm going to use my vector elliptical tool right here, which is grouped with a lot of other shapes, ellipse tool. And very importantly, at the top here, make sure you are on the path setting, path. Okay, so I'm just going to draw an oval here. It's conceivable that I could resize it later if I want, but I'm going to say right about like that. Okay, I want it to cross the paws of the front dog here on purpose. So there is my path, if you will. Now to put text on that path, I go to my text tool, and I'm actually going to zoom in on the image here. And I'm going to scroll up here with my space bar. Okay, and to initiate text on a path, you get close to the path, and it may be a little hard to see, but your cursor is going to change with this little squiggly line. That will be your insert point on the path. So I'm going to click it, I'll say about here. And you see it starts by filling it in with placeholder text. If you start to type right away, you replace that placeholder text. So I'm just going to say this is text on a path, for example, and you can see how it's typing. And if I cheat over here, I'm going to see what I had written using a vector path and the text tool. So I'm going to just recreate that, and I'll just type it in. So if I want to come back in, I can just get close and then put my insert point there. Actually, let me just go in here. Yeah, just going to scroll down. Using a vector, I'll say a vector shape and the text tool. Okay, let me see what else I'd written there. The text and shape can be edited. Very true. Okay, let me just click back in here again. The text and shape can be edited. And let me just show you that. Let me zoom out a bit here. Okay. So to make changes to the text, you can just go in and select part or all of it. Now if you go in there and partially select it and you want to make sure you get it all, I would recommend going select all to ensure. Now the way this line works is there's a start point and there's actually an end point. Because if you have too much text to fit on the circle, part of it could get hidden. So I'll show you that in a second, but right now just to edit this, if I wanted to change the color, for example, I'm going to come and make it white. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'm just going to use the little slider here. And okay, let's say about that much, and I may come back and change it a bit later. If I want to change the font, I can. Let's see if I have impact handy here. Yes, okay, there's my nice bold impact font. Alright, so I'm just going to click inside of there again to kind of deselect the text and show you how you can move this on the path. Okay, if you notice here, and again it's subtle, there's a little square or little dot where it begins, and there should be another little dot on the line here somewhere else to indicate where it ends. So to change that location, you have to go to the path selection tool, and it's the black arrow tool. I believe either of these tools will work for this, but I'm going to go with the path selection tool. Now if you notice here, when I get close, it's an I-beam with an arrow. If the arrow is pointing to the right, that means I'm going to be dragging it by the beginning of the line. if it's pointing to the left, that's telling me that's the end of the line. So let me start with the beginning of the line here. So it's pointing to the right. I click, and I see that's where the end point is because I can see that dot there. And you notice all the text disappears. So let me drag it over that threshold. And you see, watch, I'll drag it all around. And that dot sort of on the right side, oh, there's something there that happened that I'll explain in a second, is where it gets cut off. You see how it's getting cut off there? So that's kind of like the end point. So I'm going to drag it backwards. Now you notice I'm staying on the outside of the circle. That was what I accidentally showed you there before. It's pretty cool. If you cross the line of the circle, now I've got my mouse down here while I'm dragging still. If I cross the line, you're flopping it, and you're putting it now on the inside of the shape. Okay, so I'm going to cross that threshold again, that line, to keep it on the outside. And I'm just dragging this. All right, so remember that endpoint is right around here. If you don't see it, you can go along the line and wait and see till your cursor is pointing to the left, like it is right now. And if I click, I've kind of grabbed that dot, if you will. I got to stay on the outside of the line here, though. Got to be careful, or it gets a little confusing. And watch here, I'm actually going to be pushing it out. See? So if I don't want any text to come over the dog's paws, I'm going to put that closing point right there. Now it is cutting off. So I'm just going to come back to the beginning. Make sure that that I-beam is pointing to the right. And it's very small, but you can see the little arrow pointing to the right. And I can start to just move this around, knowing that the cutoff point is down near the paws. So if I was to make this text bigger or add more, it won't go past here. So why don't I try that? I'm going to double click. I'm going to go back rather to the text tool. Double click inside there. And again, select all. I'm going to use my keyboard, Command A, and make this bigger just to fill in that space. And again, you can see here it's cutting off. So back to my selection tool. I'll drag this back a bit further. It's pointing to the right. So just keep your cursor on the outside of the circle, otherwise it will flop like that, okay? And see how I'm showing the rest of that text, right? So you just need to be aware of where your text ends, but it's never going to go past that point right there. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of balance that out, and there we go. Now if I want to get fancy, put a little drop shadow on it. And I can just play around with that a bit, but let's just leave that like that. And click on my move tool. If I did want to move it, of course, the move tool will let me do that. If I want to edit it, back to the vector tools. Okay, either the text tool, I'll click inside of it and select part or all of it, and the path selection tool to push it around the line. And the third thing I had mentioned earlier is that you can change the shape of the line as well. If I go in with the direct select tool and click on the line itself, I can see the handles here. So I'm going to temporarily mess it up, if you will. Look at, I'm changing the nature of this line, right? Watch what happens when I let go. It follows that line. Okay, so you can edit the line itself as a vector element. You can edit the text, which is also a vector element, by the way. And the shape, of course, which is the line. I'm going to go undo to get that circle back. But that's how you can manage that. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do here is, I'm going to save actually right now. I'm going to use my space bar and move up. And I'm just going to do a little squiggly line on the bottom with my pen tool to reinforce what we just did. Pen tool, click and drag. Just going to make a little hill, kind of a little sideways S here. And then go with my text tool. Click on the line. You see how the cursor changes when I get close to the line. Click on the line. And I'll just replace that text. This is text on a path from the pen tool. There we go. And again, if I want to move that along, I can just push it there. If I want to, the endpoint is over here, so in this case I'm not going to deal with it, but You just look for it by moving along the path. And as soon as you see that arrow pointing to the left, that's where the end point is. Okay, down here somewhere, but for now I'm just going to double click on that and change its color. So double click to start and actually select all and change the color. I'll just make it like an aqua color here. There we go. Click on that move tool if I want to move it once again and save. So that is our lesson today on working with text. Some added bonus stuff is we extended our image and we used our content aware feature to fill in the grass that actually wasn't in the original photo up here. Okay, so let's create that and hand that in on Canvas.